Hi, I'm Kevin Lee with the eMarketing Association. My day job is running Did It, an 85 plus person digital first ad agency. We also do traditional as well. And I run a nonprofit in the cause marketing space called Giving Forward. I have the pleasure of being here today with Brian Dolan at WorkReduce. So, first off, a lot of people don't know what WorkReduce is. So, why don't you give us sort of the elevator pitch on that?
Sure.
What problems do you solve?
Thanks, Kevin. It's great to be chatting with you. We solve the talent problem for agencies and brands in media buying and media analytics. And WorkReduce is inspired by my experience selling software and building software for the marketing industry, and just seeing how hard it was to find people to use some of the tools that drive the industry.
Cool. Well, obviously, work has changed a lot in the last 18 months,
No
and sort of
kidding.
the way companies structure their workforces has changed a lot. Maybe that's opened things up for you. Maybe the fact that companies feel like maybe they can hire remote by themselves is a headwind. So, have in the last year has the whole pandemic and work from home uh, uh, mix change been a headwind or a tailwind for you, or a little both?
Well, I mean, certainly we have the tailwind right now. I don't know if it's remote work causing that or not, because it stands to reason. When I was the remote company, starting 6 years ago, we were remote only. When we were remote only, we had our choice of talent, and it was hard to convince clients in some cases to use our remote workers. And now everybody's remote. And certainly, like, we have a challenge finding people right now, but everyone does. And so the demand that we've got, we're able to when we find people, we're able to fulfill that immediately. So the demand has risen tremendously, and now it's really a supply problem.
On that supply problem, I mean, obviously we're all facing it. I've got open head count myself. um,
Yeah.
but have you found that you end up playing somewhat of a role of stewarding people's career and helping facilitate the training as well? Or is it really like you expect them to walk in the door, ready to rock?
We train people as much as we can. As a small company, it's hard to be able to invest as much as we'd like in training. But when we are able to train people, the results are amazing. So we have what we call our work skills program. And so every year we have portions of time where we're dedicated to giving people new skills. It's really hard and expensive to train somebody from scratch, but we
Right.
are able to kind of push people along in their careers and teach them new skills. And it's really like beneficial for everybody. It works well for them. It works well for us. It works well for our clients. Everybody's basically making more money from it. So we're hoping to be able to invest more in that in the future. And it measurably advances people's careers. And we see that in a lot of cases. We've seen some really great success stories.
So, walk me through sort of the process. Obviously, if I have a talent shortage myself, and I end up
Huh?
wanting to work with your team, or extend my team and use some of the folks that are on your team, what does the interview process look like? What does the engagement process look like? Is it always full time? What's the typical scenario?
Sure. So, when we're sourcing resources, it starts on our end with a really detailed screening process, and we try to take a objective view of people's skills. I think there's a lot of implicit bias that occurs in the hiring process today. Some of that you see, I think, manifesting itself in a lack of diversity in a lot of large agencies. And we work to kind of weed that out by focusing on highly technical interviews, starting the process with a blind screening process, and moving from there. And as a result, we have probably one of the most diverse companies in the industry, and we're really, really proud of that. When you're engaging with us, it starts with an engagement manager who is responsible for your relationship with us as a client. They present you with a portfolio of options. So our preference is generally to give you effectively a summary of our resources. Think of it as a resume on steroids, where you can see their background, the platforms they're proficient in, examples of recent projects that they've done, feedback from clients. We steer most of our clients to choosing from just that process rather than going through a full-blown interview. There are some cases where it's required and we have to do it, but we would rather stand behind the quality of the talent that we've got and let you take a chance on them, and rather than kind of have a belabored interview process, because interviews are so subjective. It's like, what'd you have for lunch? Are you feeling good today? Did you sleep well? On both sides too. You can have just so much variability in it. And it's such a big decision to bring a resource on. So we prefer to rely on, more objective measures when we can, if that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, that's helpful. Do most of your clients end up starting with a single resource, or do some of them come to you and pick, need a half a dozen folks right out of the gate?
It really depends on the client size. You know what I mean? So smaller agencies under 300 people, you're really generally going to talk about one or two resources to start. We had a holding company come to us recently and ask for 20 people. And we only had a 9-person team to give them, but they took all 9. So, that's typical of the large conglomerates. And then we'll talk a little bit, I think, in a minute about our service desk model, where it's less about individual resources. And that can be a good option in many cases as well. But, it varies by the size of the agency. Most of our clients are on the larger side, so we do like to do these kind of 3-4+ person engagements.
So yeah, on the augmentation side, which I guess is the more flexible of your plans, are those people who are sort of just not at 100% utilization on your team already and sort of just available, or is it completely segregated where it's a completely
It's generally a completely segregated pool of resources. So we look at it as our dedicated model is where these are team members who are joining your organization virtually, white labeled. They've got your email address. They might be client facing in a lot of cases. And then our service desk is more ticket driven work. So where the dedicated model can really be anything, anywhere from entry level to, SVP level. And we've filled all of those and everything in between. A service desk model tends to be more functions like ad operations, data quality or integrity, quality assurance, campaign setup, right? And it's just tickets. And that's going to a revolving pool of people. Sometimes it's revolving. Sometimes it's really, there's just one person behind it, depending on the function. And those tend to be resources who work only on that type of projects. The dedicated model tends to be more popular with our agency clients, and brand clients really seem to be drawn to the service desk. I think there's some really interesting opportunities for agencies to adopt a service desk model. In some cases, their contracts probably limit what they're able to do in terms of being able to pass that along to their clients.
Are there situations, particularly on the dedicated side, where an agency or brand, expects to no longer need that individual, and you're able to immediately transition them into a role somewhere else because you sort of know what your own pipeline looks like, and so you can be like,
absolutely,
if you want this person, they're going to be available, July 15th. That kind of thing.
We send out emails of upcoming resource availability to our customers. So, for example, like there's a great search resource who is rolling off, June 30th. And so I just emailed a bunch of clients about it, and she is definitely rolling on to something really quickly. Some of our clients hire our folks directly. That's part of our model. You can lease or lease to own. One of our, I guess he's a reporting analyst. He came to us a couple of years ago with basically no experience. We taught him on the job to perform analytics. He had a good Excel background, but not a lot of media. And I think on June 7th, he goes full time at one of our clients at a holding company. He's working on one of the largest and most recognizable brands in the world. And he has doubled his salary, coming from really nothing to a very, very respectable, income with lots of benefits. And it's like like the success stories, like really, what keep me going with this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like also because you're essentially starting your selection process blind, that you also probably have some interesting diversity success stories as well, right? And those are really
Absolutely.
heartwarming.
Well, and it's like when I started WorkReduce like 6 years ago, I thought it was all going to be kind of anonymous and API driven, right? I was accessing Amazon's Mechanical Turk platform and sending work out to it. And, as soon as I started it, I was just really struck by the quality of the talent that I found. So like the first and biggest surprise, for me in starting this company was how much talent was out there. And so anytime we're able to like unlock that talent and bring it, to our clients and help them find talent that they might not necessarily, think of initially, it's just like, it's such a huge win for everybody.
Right. So if a brand or an agency is sort of torn between sort of taking on a full resource or augmenting with that sort of ticket-based system, what would be the thought process that they should go through to this sort of decide, or maybe your biz dev team takes them through a thought process of sort of what's the best way for
Sure.
them to engage?
Yeah, so I think there's two considerations, right? One is what's your commercial model? If you're a brand, you have a lot of flexibility, and you may also have a situation where, especially if you're an enterprise, your organization might be allergic to headcount. So either one of those options are really good there, and it just depends on what your team setup is, and that gets you into the kind of second, consideration, which is what's your operational maturity. You have to have a certain degree of operational maturity, I think, to be able to adopt a service desk. We all know how it can be especially in a smaller agency. We're all used to sitting next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, and saying, "Okay, I got this, you got this. How's the stuff going?" And you have to have your processes at least moderately mature to be able to say, "Cool, the trafficking is going into a ticket system," right? Or, we have an actual process for this. Now we help people bridge that gap, a lot of the times, and we build a lot of documentation for our clients that they get as a value add out of engaging with us. The other major consideration is, can an agency kind of pass that cost along and to their client through their commercial model? Most agency contracts seem to be headcount driven. So for them, it's often easiest to say, "Hey, here's a head. It fits into this cost tier. We're marking it up and passing it on to you, client." And of course, there's certain considerations with the clients. Many of our largest clients, the Fortune 50, Fortune 100 clients of agencies, have to approve us specifically as a vendor. We go through all sorts of audits and stuff like that, and have to have huge amounts of insurance and all that stuff. But I think I'd like to see more large agencies get to a point where they think about asking us to perform entire functional areas for them. Let us do all of the reconciliation. Let us do all of the ad operations. I think that's where you get the media buying process to a degree of division of labor, where you can increase efficiency, because I can focus on areas of operation that it's hard for an agency to focus on, because we work across so many agencies, right? We can really work on getting ad operations efficient in a way that it's hard for especially a medium-sized agency to get into. I can invest there. A medium-sized agency needs to really be investing in its front office, in innovating and bringing the latest things to the client. It's hard to focus on your billing, invoicing, reconciliation, all the really boring, unsexy stuff. We love that.
Yep, it all still needs to get done, obviously.
Got to get done, right?
With regards to, if people think that their need might be more short-term or interim versus longer term, do you advise them differently based on, if they're articulating to you, I probably only need it for 6 months, or, this is going to be something that will go on indefinitely?
So right now, just because of the way the labor market is, we're looking at typically 9 to 12 months in engagement. So it's really hard to look at shorter term engagements for us right now, because it's hard for us to attract the talent. I'd like to be able to do more of them. We need to be, I think, at a slightly larger scale to be able to say, hey, cool, here's a way to subscribe to ad operations for 3 or 6 months. We're not quite there yet, but I hope to be there soon, especially as we start to expand internationally and we bring on more near and offshore options that are effectively at different cost rates that allow us to expand our offering. We're primarily onshore US based today, even though we do have a global presence. We're just beginning to ramp up that global operations, but we see it as a way to not only offer different levels of cost to our client, but also different service models that would include kind of shorter subscriptions and things like that.
If you come across some talent and that talent, let's say, is a stay-at-home mom or something like that, and sort of wouldn't be able to dedicate what would typically be full-time, do you then only consider them for that sort of service desk role, or would you sometimes maybe try to?
Yeah, good question. So we started with an entirely fractional model, and just as the markets evolved, we've moved to more of a full-time model. So we do absolutely slot people with a range of different schedules into either the service desk, or in some cases we are able to support a fractional dedicated model. That's getting rarer and rarer, but we have to do evening and weekend support for all sorts of clients, right? And then we've got people who are supervising different time zones. So especially on that service desk model, it does allow a lot more flexibility. And frankly, like I think we believe that by offering more flexibility, we're accessing talent that you otherwise might not get to,
Yeah, and that was the reason I asked, is in a labor shortage, what might not otherwise be a solution suddenly looks pretty good.
Absolutely. It is a little bit challenging though to juggle, a bunch of different, individual schedules against client schedules, because so much does have to happen during the workday, during either East Coast or West Coast business hours or somewhere in between. So it's more challenging than I would have expected to balance that. But the service desk model does give us a good way to do it, because you've got an SLA of 24, 48 hours, which by the way, for ad operations is like so competitive compared to what you're internally looking at inside of a large holding company agency, that it's very, very attractive,
Right. Are generally people looking for like their time zone or an adjacent time zone, or are they also willing to sort of look for when they're bringing on a full-time person to time zones that are maybe 2-3 hours different from where they're at?
Yeah, people are generally really flexible with time zones within a 2 to 3 hour range. So, in the U.S. market, we have people who work in the Atlantic time zone, who are in, the U.S. Virgin Islands, for example, all the way to the West Coast. And even within an individual company, I mean, we all know how it goes. Some people roll in at 11 and stay till 7. You got the early birds who are coming in at 7 a.m. and leaving at 4. So we're able to match the working style of a different, any different agency based on that. But that's part of the kind of onboarding and expectation setting process that we're doing as we're assessing the client needs. Are like, when are you guys actually working? What time zones realistically are going to work here? And then we can match that. So, we have people who are West Coast early birds who do great on an East Coast schedule, and East Coast night owls who are great with the West Coast team.
Cool. Well, obviously, regardless of the model, not every hire works out. So I think probably HR people would be interested in understanding how your business model actually mitigates risk if for whatever reason there isn't a fit, right? So how is that an advantage actually to your model if the fit isn't as good as everyone thought it was going to be?
Yeah, I mean, and it does happen. We do our best, but things don't work out for a number of reasons, and we're generally able to swap someone in really quickly. And so having our pools of resources available definitely helps that. It's obviously a little more challenging right now with the level of demand that we're seeing, but we do guarantee, our resources. So if we place somebody and it's not working out in the first couple of weeks, we certainly don't charge for that.
So looking to the future, do you have any sort of predictions on where, where the workforce, where distance work will go, or where you'll go as a company?
Sure, yeah.
I think would be interesting for people to know about.
I mean, I think remote work is here to stay. I think the economic arguments against it are irrefutable. It is absolutely critical in a labor market like now or any time for enterprises to be able to access the broadest possible pool of talent, right? And it's so critical now, or not critical, but I think now that everyone has had a taste of remote work, it's so hard to go back to say, yeah, I'm going to give up 45 minutes or an hour and a half every single day to commute, plus the cost, plus the impact on the environment, right? People, I think want the time to spend with their families, to work out, to have hobbies, right? To be able to live in cheaper places. Like, these are all really compelling economic arguments for the worker. It's really compelling also for the enterprise to have lower real estate costs. You just can't beat, I think, I don't know what you would call, but just like the momentum of cash. It's like a physical law of money flowing, I think, that will make this happen. And I've been saying that for a long time, and it finally came true,
Yeah.
But I think, we're also in for a lot of exciting times in the advertising industry in general. We're on the cusp of the next wave of technological change driven by a bunch of new platforms that are coming out, as well as privacy-driven changes. Like, hold on, it is not getting any less exciting anytime soon. So it's like such a dynamic time for us all to be in this business. And I think we've got a lot to look forward to.
Great. Well, so thanks so much for joining me in this interview. I learned a lot about your platform and sort of where you started and where you are now. And I look forward to continuing to watch your journey.
Thanks, Kevin. It's great to chat.